talk about the radiographs, the pulp chamber and canals. The visualization of the pulp chamber and pulp canal or canals by standard radiography or digital radiography provides the clinician with the evidence to augment what has been found clinically. All teeth should be examined periodically, radiographically and clinically. Knowing what might be expected anatomically about the pulp chamber and pulp canal, which has been considered in a previous section, helps when radiographs are taken. The radiographs in figure 13.25A through I illustrates the normal pulp chambers and canals. They are what seen generally in the dental office, not the highly selected radiograms of the various teeth. You can see this one in the figure 13.25. In the 13.25 figure, picture is showing the large pulp chambers and pulp canals in a young adult. The picture is showing the mandibular incisors normal with normal pulp canals. In picture is showing the lateral incisor and canine with the normal pulp chambers and canals. Root resorption is evident on the lateral incisor. In picture B showing the maxillary canine and premolars with normal pulp chambers and pulp canals. You can see the root resorption on the first premolar, which is associated with orthodontics. In picture, this is the picture 13.25 from E through I. The picture E showing the mandibular lateral incisor, canine, first premolar with normal chambers and canals, right? And the picture F showing the mandibular second premolar and first and second molars with normal pulp chambers and canals. You can see the curvature of the mesial root of the mandibular first molar, which is more frequently seen. Note the curvature of the mesial root of the first molar. Here the curvature is very more, so it is having the significant curvature, right? Let's have a look at the picture G. Picture G showing the mandibular molars and premolars with normal pulp chambers and canals. You can see the curvature of the mesial root of the second molar. And picture H showing the impacted third molar adjacent to the second mandibular molar, right? And the pulp chambers and pulp canals are normal in this also. In picture I is showing the first and second primary molars being resolved in association with the erupting permanent of premolars. In mandibular second molar in the process of erupting, right? Now let's have a discussion on the crown and root fractures. The fractures of teeth may involve the crown and root or the root. Probably the most common are fractures of the crown. In some cracked teeth, only the enamel is involved. In others, both the enamel and dentin may be affected, but initially or later the pulp also may be involved, with or without the loss of tooth structure. For example, cusp. In severe trauma, the whole crown may be lost. The clinician should be familiar with the most likely places morphologically for cracking or fractures to occur. The most likely places involve developmental grooves. You can see in the figure 13.26. Let's have a look over the figure 13.26. This is the figure 13.26 showing the fracture lines most commonly seen in the maxillary first premolar and mandibular first molar. You can see the picture. The above one is the mandibular first molar and the lower one is the maxillary first premolar, right? Fractures of the cusps of maxillary first premolar and mandibular first molars often occur along developmental grooves or stress lines as shown in figure 13.26. Right? They often occur along the developmental grooves or along the stress lines. Right? Such fractures may occur in connection with bruxism and clenching. It is not uncommon for the distal lingual cusp of the mandibular first molar to fracture in association with a large restoration which leads to pulpitis. You can see this in figure 13.27. This is the figure 13.27 picture is showing the radiograph showing the periapical radiolucency associated with parulus shown in picture B. In picture B showing the fracture of the distolingual cusp related to undermined tooth structure and amalgam restoration. The fractures of the root causes symptoms that resemble those of other dental problems. Therefore, the diagnosis of root fracture may be difficult, especially when the fracture does not appear on the radiograph. You can see this in figure 13.28. The figure 13.28 you can see very clearly. Picture is showing the radiograph showing the loss of lamina dura on the mesial root of the mandibular molar but no indication of a root fracture. Right? Longitude picture be showing longitudinal fracture on the distal aspect of the crown and on the distal aspect of the crown and coronal root. Fractures may be an extension from the crown and may extend to the pulp or involve only the root adjacent to the periodontal ligament. Horizontal root fractures are most likely the result of external physical trauma or clenching and bruxism. Vertical root fractures may be caused by bruxism and clenching or may be the result of restorations with endodontic posts in root canals. Let's talk about the relation of the posterior root apices to the mandibular canal. Of interest to the clinician doing endodontics. Periapical surgery or placement of implants is the position of the mandibular nerve or mandibular canal and the mantle foramen. Of interest to the clinician doing endodontics, periapical surgery or placement of implants is the position of the mandibular nerve or canal and the mantle foramen. Right? The mandibular nerve traversing the mandible in the mandibular canal occupies different positions relative to the apices of the molar and premolar teeth. You can see in the figure 13.29a through D. You can see the mandibular canal may be located buccally or lingually to the apices, or it may to the apices buccally or lingually to the apices of the roots of the mandibular molars and premolars. Right? Let's have a look over the figure 13.30. A through D. Figure 13.29 shows the diagrammatic representation of the sections through the mandible at the position of the second premolar and first, second and third molars. Dotted line represents the faciolingual position of the mandibular canal. Dotted line represents the faciolingual position of the mandibular canal. Right? You can see this one. The mandibular canal may be located adjacent to the apices, or it may be located facially or lingual to the apices. Right? In figure 13.30, you can see the distance from the outer to the inner surface of the buccal plate in picture in 1, right? And from the inner surface to the cortical plate, from the inner surface of the cortical plate to the apex of the root in 2, and from the canal to the apex of the root in 3. Reflect the data obtained from sections of the mandible. This is the figure 13.30 showing picture A, showing the diagrammatic representation of a cross section of the mandible. Picture B, showing the enlarged view with 3 measurements taken as indicated in the text. See, picture 1 indicates the distance from the outer to the inner surface of the buccal plate and 2 indicates the from the inner surface of the cortical plate to the apex of the tooth, whereas 3 indicates the from the canal to the apex of the tooth. Right? The mean width of the buccal plate. The mean width of the buccal plate. You can see this in figure 13.30. B1 over the premolar is 1.9 plus or minus 0.49 mm. Over the first molar is 2.38 plus or minus 0.57 mm. Right? And over the second molar is 5.6 plus or minus 0.93 mm, and over the third molar it is 2.34 plus or minus 1 mm. Likewise, the mean distance from the inner buccal plate to the apex of the root. You can see this in figure 13.30. B2 for the second premolar is 3.78 plus or minus 1.04 mm, and for the first molar is 4.1 plus or minus 0.98 mm, and for second molar it is 7.1 plus or minus 1.4 mm, and for the third molar it is 4.03 plus or minus 1.8 mm. Right? Likewise, the mean vertical distance from the canal to the apex. You can see this in figure 13.30. B3. Right? For the second premolar is 3.07 plus or minus 0.43 mm. For the first molar it is 4.03 plus or minus 0.31 mm. For the second molar it is 2.5 plus or minus 0.25 mm. Right? And for the third molar it is 1.96 plus or minus 0.27 mm. Right? with regard to the buccolingual alignment of the mandibular canal to the root apices. The canal is in vertical alignment with the second premolars for 65% of the time, slightly lingual to the apices of the first premolars, slightly lingual to the apices of the first premolars, slightly lingual to the apices of the first molar apices for 71% of the time, in line with the apices of the second molars for 73% of the time, and in line with the third molars for 56% of the time. It is only the first molar. The mandibular canal is located slightly lingual to the apices, right, and with the first, second and third molars it is in line with the apices, whereas for second premolar it is vertically below the apices of the second premolar. Data are based on the vertical axis of the each tooth, with the recognition that more than one apex is present. Data are based on the vertical axis of each tooth with the recognition that more than one apex is present. Thus, the position of the mandibular canal relative to the apices of the teeth tend to follow the dotted line in figure 13.29. Thus, the position of the mandibular canal relative to the apices of the teeth tend to follow the dotted line in figure 13.29. The position of the mental foramen relative to the mandibular premolars and first molar can be described as follows. Right, the foramen is between the first and second premolars in 33% of time, in line with the second premolar in 11% of the time, and distal to the second premolar in 56% of the time. And in terms of vertical position, the foramen can be found coronal to the apices 22% of the time, at the apices 15% of the time, and below the apices 63% of the time, right.